So, I've been following the Change My Mind series from Steven Crowder on YouTube and making some responses to some of his things. And one of them that I came across was, "There is no hate speech, change my mind." And these are things where it's just like, you kind of just wish that you could be a participant in that, because there are often some things that go overlooked. First of all, I don't know if he has like a long version of that one, but the one that I saw was only like 17 minutes. And there's some very critical things that a lot of people overlook with this whole notion of there is no hate speech. I mean, that's like, it kind of goes without saying that yes, there is. I mean, hate speech is any form of speech that contains hatred. I mean, yes, people associate it with things like racism and homophobia, xenophobia, but you could also, like, even if you were to just say something like, "I hate the Philadelphia Eagles," which I do, I mean, that's speech that contains hatred. So yes, hate speech does exist, but when people use the term, they're mostly thinking about, discriminatory things. But you can have hatred for a social group, or hatred for, something like, a religion, like Islamophobia or anti-Semitism. All of those things exist. So, I mean, for starters, this kind of goes without saying, so I'm very surprised why more people don't just take it from that approach. One of the more clear-cut examples that I have heard was actually from David Knight, of all people. Real News with David Knight, InfoWars, where he just said, "Hate speech is to the first as the AR-15 is to the second." And I thought that was just like, yeah, all right, I'm on board with that. I can follow what you're saying there. I mean, it's like, with the Second Amendment, would you say that AR-15s don't exist? Yes, of course they do. It's just a different kind of firearm. So it's the same thing with hate speech in the First. Yes, hate speech exists. It's just the question is really like, are we trying to make it illegal or not? And so many people are saying in America we have a First Amendment, that this is protected. And, people like Lauren Southern have said that very clearly. But, that's what Elizabeth Warren is currently working on in the Senate. They were trying to say that hate speech serves as an existential threat to certain communities, so they want to make certain things banned. Well, I don't even really know what to say about that. I mean, if they do pass some law like that, it's just like, I would follow it, but that's almost maybe getting a little bit excessive. So it's like, let's look at some other things. There's this whole sort of genre of free speech activism, free speech absolutism, and it is an absolute joke. I mean, what are people thinking? Like, what on earth is this? You're a free speech absolutist? And then, of course, they always make the concession, Oliver Wendell Holmes, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater, and stuff like that. And it's just like, that is absolutely trivial. Who on earth is an actual free speech absolutist? Nobody is. I mean, you're not allowed to threaten people. You're not allowed to use your speech to make threats of violence. That's illegal. I mean, you're not allowed to commit slander or libel. Those things are illegal. You can't use your speech for blackmail. That's illegal. Perjury. That's also, a form of speech. Or covered by the First Amendment and, expression laws. All of those things are not protected under the First Amendment. So it's just like, there are just countless ways, that we have limitations on speech, and that's the whole notion that everyone should understand without saying, where it's just like, I mean, you can't even use your language to file false charges against someone with the police. You can't make fake reports and stuff. You also, this is true, you cannot call a business, like some people call businesses to do prank calls, and maybe you call a pizza place and you ask for 20 pizzas as a prank call. That's illegal, and that's not protected. There's a certain, many places have laws about, intentionally causing a business to lose funds. You can be prosecuted for things like that. There are all sorts of limitations on free speech. It's just no one ever bothers to look them up, because, let's not kid ourselves. This is all connected to things associated with racism and divisive rhetoric, and people are sort of worried that they're going to have less freedom if, there are things that are put in place that prevent people from saying certain speech, even if it is only about racism. Like if they ban the N-word, or if they ban, the K-word, or, the F-word about homosexuals. It's like they would view that as some sort of horrible, horrible tragedy. but it's just plain not important. So it's like, you can't really just claim that you have a right to be racist because of the First Amendment. You do not. It's like, you cannot, use your speech to tell someone, get out of my store, you're of a particular skin color. That's not protected. I mean, and it's not. We have the 1964 Civil Rights Act that prevents people from doing that in public accommodations. There are all sorts of things that, already exist. It's just, I don't really know where people are coming with this stuff. It's like, because of the YouTube generation, they just hear somebody like Steven Crowder talking, and they think that he actually has merit. And they also hear the exact same things echoed by just countless other people. They're trying to say that there is no hate speech, there is only free speech. Utter nonsense. It's just not true. There are all sorts of reasonable limits that are put in place on things that are related to speech. No one is a free speech absolutist. Do you really want people, having the right to blackmail you and to commit perjury and libel? Or someone can steal your content and then just claim that that's a use of free speech? Or someone can make threats to you and your family members, threats of violence that they are going to kill you tomorrow? It's like, those things aren't protected, and that they're for very good reasons. And even if you think that they don't have good reasons for that, that goes into the simple category of, that's too bad. It's like, it's the law. You can try to change the law in an according manner. We have, the processes of amendment. It's just that stuff is slow, and you most likely will lose because it's an uphill battle. So that's a very, very short-winded thing that comes out on this whole notion of there is no hate speech, there's only free speech. I mean, I really think that it's all just settled, and it's been something that has been, kind of blown out of proportion. But during this particular episode, I heard Crowder say something rather interesting just about how he's talking about how, he doesn't want to get angry with people, he doesn't want to get aggressive, but he just wants to hear different points of view. Well, this is something that also is just painfully not true. It's like, there does come a line when someone doesn't deserve to share their point of view, and everybody knows it. It's like, Jordan Peterson even talked about this when he would tell stories about William F. Buckley, when he would say racial superiority is where you draw the line. You just put it in a box and you just throw it away. And that's true. What the stuff that Crowder does is, it's just like that. It's just sort of a way to provoke people who have this kind of lust for exerting more power over social groups, and they're trying to just sort of capitalize on their ignorance. So it's like, I really just cannot understand why anyone in his fan base would take it seriously. The stuff is not really founded on fact, it's just like, someone does not really deserve a platform for Nazism or for racism. And, you have people like Lauren Southern saying free speech protects your right to be racist. Don't pretend that it doesn't. Well, we've just gone through all the examples about why that's not true. You're not allowed to use any form of action with your speech. Once you become active with that speech, like saying, get out of my store, you're black, that is not protected. It is just painfully to the contrary. But, it's like, you also don't really need to entertain discussions with someone about neo-Nazism or why they are in the Klan. And that's just one of the things that on the left wing, a lot of people, well, they sat silent for too long. They were just like, we don't want to even give these people the time of day. We don't want to listen to anything they have to say because we just don't want to feed the troll, sort of. But what happened is, well, they just got bigger and bigger because of, existing tensions in America that never went away. It's more just like there was already a wound and somebody threw salt on it. I'm not saying who. I'm sure you can guess. And that led to things like Antifa, and that's why they got Antifa, which is also ridiculous. Antifa's a violent organization. They're wrong. Full stop. There's absolutely no reason. The fact if they lead things to unprovoked violence, it is unacceptable and should never happen. The only answer is peaceful coexistence. And the way you achieve peaceful coexistence is like, well, for starters, you have to marginalize all things such as Nazism, KKK, the Order, Aryan Brotherhood, And also on the other end, the reverse side, Black Liberation Army, the JDL Jewish Defense League, radical Islamic terrorism, all these things that are based on hatred, anger, and destruction just need to be pushed to the fringes of society until they are completely absolved, until they have no more movement and no more power. And by push to the fringes of society, that's a metaphor. That just means, like, you have to condemn them, and you don't really need to be debating someone about neo-Nazism. You don't need to debate someone about racial superiority, because for starters, that stuff is not true. I mean, it's like, racial superiority is something that, maybe in the most fair terms, you could say that it's not settled science. It's like, if you find 3 psychologists that say that yes it is, then you'll find 3 psychologists that will say no it is not, and it is not something that is settled. So at the very least, that's just the end of the discussion. It's just like, we're talking about the links between IQ and race. I mean, that's just the end of discussion, and a lot of people don't want to hear that because it's not suitable for them. They don't benefit from hearing something like that, but that's just the painful reality that we all have to recognize, is that all human beings, deserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and it's like inalienable rights as endowed by the Creator. Those are the things that we are founded upon, and if we were going to translate that into the 21st century, it becomes, instead of all humans are created equal, how about, well, actually, it's all men are created equal, right? It should be all humans are equal. And that doesn't mean that we're the same. What that means is that we all share, certain things, that like certain rights that everyone deserves, regardless of skin color. Anyone who chooses to live in peace is welcome in the world. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, atheist. It doesn't matter. As long as you choose to live in peace and be away from destruction. And if you're contributing to society without bringing destruction into it, then you are welcome. Those are the real messages that we need to be conveying, not this sort of nonsense. There is no hate speech, there is only free speech. I mean, yes, hate speech exists. Any form of speech that contains hatred is hate speech. And at the very least, you can say, though, that when people are trying to use their speech to direct at a particular social group, whether it be it race, religion, skin color, national origin, if they use any form of hatred directed to them and they use their speech for that, well, that's hate speech. It exists. So it's like that, that's pretty simple. One of the things is, we come out of this generation of kind of like, not Generation X, but Generation Y, where it's like just the whole concept of media, like comedians would really push boundaries, cartoons would, really try and push boundaries, and people actually did find their stuff funny, and they had lots of dark humor, and they really would, do risque things, and they were demonized by people from older generations who just did not accept it. So we've really grown up with a large awareness of freedom of expression, but that should never go so far as the point when we think that freedom of expression is above all the examples that we've discussed so far, like perjury and blackmail and libel and slander, and, using your speech for destructive fighting words and threats of immediate violence, and using, speech to file false charges on somebody at the police station. It's like, all of those things are not protected under the First Amendment. No, absolutely not. And everybody knows it. They just don't look at it from that perspective because it doesn't suit their agenda. Furthermore, you don't have to entertain all points of view. Sorry, the intellectual dark web is wrong. The IDW is wrong. Steven Crowder is wrong. It's like, they just want you to be watching their shows. And they do. They do succeed in that. They do get you to watch their YouTube shows so they can monetize them and they can get their clicks and their views and sell advertising, whatever. It's almost sort of the same thing as looking at a freak show from the 1800s. Please forgive me, so that I should say a sideshow with people of certain differentialities, or whatever we would want to call that. But anyway, that's all it is. If you have anything to say, I'm listening.